So you've been writing since '93.
Yes.
And why did it take 12 years for introducing Gordon Chambers to come?
Wow, that's a great question. You're asking some really good questions. I hope I'm not talking too long in these answers.
No, thank you.
I always wanted to sing, and even prior to '93 in college, from '86 to '90, I was singing and performing on, all the time. When I first got to New York, I was performing. I had a little jazz trio, and I would do my shows, and that's kind of where I was really leaning my career. And then when I met Dave and the Untouchables family and Barry and all these, songwriters and producers who needed me to help them with things that they were doing, that took on a life of its own. And I was very interested in that because I'd always dreamed of being a writer as well and a producer, but it was never instead of being a performer. It was more like I always dreamed of my life being both of those things. But I think that career took on a life of its own, and then the ball came rolling, and I went with it, and I kind of said, okay, well, one of these days I'll get around to making my own record. And I did get a couple of record deal offers. One was at Motown, and another was at
What time?
Universal. The Motown deal I was offered was in about '95, and the Universal deal I was offered was in '98. And I didn't end up going forward with either of the deals. I didn't think the deals were quite right, and something told me not to fulfill those deals. And I didn't sign either of the deals. So about '99, I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe this is not really meant to be. Maybe my life is just meant to be expressed. My music is meant to be expressed through the other singers that I write for. So went back to that, and I said, if something happens, then something happens. But I'm not going to make this a focus, so to speak. 1998, when I started writing for L.A. Reid's publishing company, I started doing a lot of international work. I started going to London a lot. Started meeting all these artists in London. Kelly LaRock had a top 10 hit with her. Another Level, I wrote for a lot of the pop artists, Ronan Keating, Martine McCutcheon, had to do really well. And that was invigorating me again, and I was really excited doing about that. But then right about like 2002, I just kind of felt myself getting kind of, I don't want to say bored, but everything was not as satisfying, and then I just felt like there was something else that I wanted to do, and I didn't know quite what to do, but I knew I had more energy in me that wasn't being expressed. Then in 2003, I worked with Whitney Houston, and that was my dream as a songwriter always. That was the one artist that I always wanted to write with. And Whitney and I really got along in the studio. We really bonded. We really became friends. And, I was showing her this bridge of a song that I wanted her to sing in a certain way. And she said, Gordon, you really have an amazing voice. She said, do you want to sing? And I said, well, I'm singing now. I'm just singing the bridge. No, she said, no, I'm not talking about right now. Do you want to do what I do? And I was like, first of all, I had no idea that she was going to ask me that question because it had nothing to do with the assignment of what we were there for. And I was like, mm-hmm. And she said, if you want to do it, baby, you should go ahead and do it. And she said, and I think you can do it. And so, it was like she looked into my soul. And so I came back to New York and I started really meditating. Like one of the best singers in the universe tells you that you can sing and that she believes in you. I had to put all my inferiority complexes aside and all my, am I good enough to do this? And will people, think I'm as good as a singer as they thought I was a writer? All of that, I got over all of that because there was a lot of that going on. A lot of the feeling like, well, I tried to get a record deal before and that didn't work out. At that point, when Whitney told me it was time for me to do it, I called up all my producing friends, Troy Taylor, Barry. I said, listen, guys, I want to make a record. I don't have a record deal. I don't have a lot of money, but I want to make a record. And I'm going to probably just release it independently, try to build a buzz. Will you guys help me? Will you support me? And everybody that I asked said yes. Even friends of mine who were recording artists like Carl Thomas, Mike Phillips, and Roy Hargrove, that, I asked them to play on my, on my songs and sing on my songs, and they were like, come on, when? Just tell me what you need. And everybody I asked supported me. Every single person. Even Essence hired me to perform at the Essence Music Festival after I had left, my former employer. So everybody supported me. I was like, that's when I knew that it was meant to be. So that's when I released Introducing Gordon Chambers, and the response was just phenomenal. I mean, people to this day still love that. I mean, they touched them. I mean, the emails that I got and how moved people were about the songs. And I was feeling like it was time for me to make a project that really said something to adults. Because I felt like, pop music was at that time and still is so catered to the youth and to teenagers and to that demographic that that the adults, people who are over 25 or 26, who are dealing with love and dealing with life and dealing with relationships and dealing with spirituality, that not a lot of music in the pop landscape was being made for them. And I felt that, I have all these songs and I have all these relationships. Why not make a record that's going to touch that boutique community that I feel is being underserved? And that's the kind of record I specifically made, and that's who my audience is and has been, and the response has been beyond what, emotionally beyond what I even predicted it would be.
So what makes a good songwriter, or in your case, a great songwriter?
I think what makes a great songwriter is, I think there's nothing new. I mean, people have been dealing with the same issues, forever and ever. But it's like when you put a twist on it, when you find a clever way to say something in a very unique way that, it's kind of like if you can, like, it's kind of like cooking. Like somebody who can't cook that well can take those same ingredients and it just tastes so. And somebody who can really, as a chef, can take the same ingredients and just the way they do it is turn the fire up just a little bit lower, a little bit higher, or, just put this much more butter in the pan or whatever it is. They have the technique. Good songwriters are technicians who know how to take the same ingredients and just put it in a way that it has that special pizzazz of that zing. We talk about Stevie Wonder. I mean, like Stevie said, there's a ribbon in the sky for our love. I mean, who would think, like, there's a ribbon in the sky for our love? That's so beautiful. Or Prince, I want to see you laughing in the purple rain. He's basically saying, I want to see you happy. But instead of saying, I want to see you happy, he's saying, I want to see you laughing in the purple rain. So it's the images. It's just finding that unique way to say things in a way that's not been said before. And the melody. Having that melody, writing that melody that the whole world wants to sing along to.
And you started writing just as the New Jack Swing was pitching out.
Yeah, I was in that era. I mean, it was like, it's kind of like when I started, it was in the New Jack, it was kind of in the New Jack Swing era. And it was, I think like that was like when classic R&B was really still king. Like people like Toni Braxton and Whitney and Babyface, like those were the kings of real melodic, real sophisticated R&B, and it was lush and it was grand. It was like I think of that period as still very connected to like the Motown period. Now we're in a whole other
How so?
Because of the melody and because of the sophistication of the artist. Like the artist wanted to be sophisticated. Like when I think of the era in which I started writing, the artists that I think were like my biggest, inspirations, both as singers or recording artists or touring artists, was number one was Luther Vandross. And number two was Whitney Houston. When you thought about what they were, how refined they were, how melodic they were, how beautiful their voices, and how even when you went to a concert of theirs, you had to make sure that you were even dressed your best. You know what I mean? Like that was a certain kind of refinement that I think is very much connected to Motown. Now we're in a whole different club, whatever goes, kind of casual dancing. We're in another zone right now. So, and that's fine. I mean, music is cyclical, so music, changes.